should probably start that. There we go. And as all of you are joining us today from many places, near and far, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. I also believe it's important to comment on the news that broke earlier today. My colleagues and I at CHRA are terribly saddened to hear of the announcement of 751 unmarked graves being discovered in Cowessess First Nation at the Maryvale Residential School. We stand in solidarity with our Indigenous partners and offer our grief and support at this time. We would encourage those who aren't aware of what's going on to learn more by looking at the information from the National Association of Friendship Centers. Before I introduce today's speakers, I'd like to give a brief run through of our webinar technology for the day. So today's webinar is in real time. Shortly, you'll be able to see a title screen of today's presentation, and you'll be able to hear both myself and our panelists via your computer speakers, headset, or through your telephone if you've chosen to dial in. As we're in webinar format, you're all muted. If you wish to ask questions, you can type them in the Q&A section on the webinar control panel at any time, and we will address as many questions at the end of the webinar. So today we're going to be hearing from three great people from the Home Depot Foundation. The first is Michael Larangi, National Account Manager. The second is Amy Bilodeau, Senior Manager of Community Investment, and Emily Rowe, Community Investment Specialist. Welcome, Michael, Amy, and Emily. Amy, over to you.
I'll just take myself off mute. Welcome, everyone. We're very excited to be here. So just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. So Amy Bilodeau, and I serve as our Senior Manager of Community Investment with the Home Depot Canada Foundation. And I'm joining you today from the Niagara region, which is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Chippewa, and Haudenosaunee peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. And I'll allow my colleague Emily to introduce herself as well.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everybody. My name is Emily Rowe. I'm a Community Investment Specialist with the Home Depot Canada Foundation, and I'm joining you here today from Milton, Ontario, which is on the traditional territories of the Mississauga of the Credits First Nation. Over to Michael to introduce himself, and then I will be happy to share my screen and get the presentation underway.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. My name is Michael Larangi, the National Account Manager. I manage the relationship with CHRA and Home Depot nationally across Canada. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm trusting that everybody can see my screen, and I'm trusting my fellow panelists that they'll tell me if you can't.
You can, you're good.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll pass it over to Amy to kick us off today, walk through our agenda, and we'll get started.
Excellent. Well, we're very excited to be here with all of you. So thank you for taking the time to join us. And where I am, it's currently quite sunny and beautiful. So I hope you're enjoying a lovely day as well. In terms of our agenda, we want to give you a bit of an overview about us. So really walk you through and kind of share the approach the Home Depot Canada Foundation takes to the work that we do to prevent and end youth homelessness. Then we'd love to walk you through some of our funding opportunities, share some updates about our customer campaign, which if you have the opportunity, if you're a customer of ours, you'll be seeing that come live in our stores in July. And then we're going to go through some of our strategy development and also talk about some of our greater community investment and how there's some other potential opportunities to work with us in that space. And then we've also reserved some time for Q&A. So I'd love to get started and really just kind of provide a bit of an overview about the Home Depot Canada Foundation and the work that we do. So we've been committed to preventing and ending youth homelessness since 2013. So prior to that, we had a foundation that did fantastic work in the community, great partnerships with organizations like Habitat for Humanity, who we continue to work with, of course, but didn't have necessarily the strategic focus or the attention to a specific cause. So we knew we wanted to help in the housing and shelter space, but we weren't necessarily focused on the cause that we're now very dedicated to, which is ending and preventing youth homelessness. And a big part of the reason why we identified youth homelessness is we knew that it was a space where we could target our funding and hopefully provide great opportunity to build youth capabilities. And we also saw that as an opportunity to ideally stop youth from becoming prone to chronic homelessness and, an extended time with whether it's in the shelter system, really focusing, wanting to build up the opportunities for youth and potentially, focusing in on that cause. Our goal is to really end homelessness as a whole. But that's kind of our strategic focus. So we do that through a few different initiatives. So we have the Home Depot Canada Foundation, which is a private corporate foundation. We are funded by the corporation. So the Home Depot Canada is our biggest funder. And then our supplier and our vendor networks are another huge supporter of our work, which is fantastic. And they've been rallying behind this cause as long as we've been doing this work. And then we also have our customer campaign, which we're going to talk about. And those are kind of the primary funding areas of our foundation's work. And then in addition to that, we have 3 other key areas that kind of make up our overall community investment portfolio. So our Team Depot initiative is it's ran by our associates here in Canada. It's also supported by a program based out of our headquarters in the US. And this is really where we put to strengths of our sweat equity. We're volunteering in the community. This is an opportunity where if you have a partnership with your local store and you need volunteers to come out, you can ask our Team Depot associates to come out and support. So it's something we're really proud of. It gives all of our associates across the country the opportunity to volunteer in their local communities. And it also strengthens a lot of our nonprofit partnerships. And the other 2 areas that are part of our community investment that we won't go into too much detail, but just so you know and are familiar with, is our Homer Fund. Our Homer Fund is very much an internal United Way campaign sort of format. So the idea with the Homer Fund is that if you're an associate of the Home Depot and you're in need, maybe you have an unexpected crisis in your life and you need some additional funding to support through that, you can apply for funding from the Homer Fund. And it also is a fundraising support. So if you're an associate in a store and other associates want to support you through a difficult time, you can fundraise through our Homer Fund campaign, and the Homer Fund will also match those funds. And then the final area is we do, out of our community investment portfolio, we do disaster relief. So even as most recently with the fires that we saw in Point Claire last week and the unfortunate tornadoes dropping down in Quebec recently, these are all small examples of how we support, but we always are on the ready, being able to support in any of the communities that we activate in or operate in and across the country to really make sure that if a community needs something urgently, we're prepared to support that. Those are kind of our key areas of community investment, but I'm going to focus on the foundation. So the Home Depot Canada Foundation, as I shared, really focusing on preventing and ending youth homelessness. That's our mandate. And I think on the next slide here, we have kind of how we do this. So as I had shared, it's really been the intent of us to kind of focus in and really define this mandate. We are currently in a $50 million pledge. We are working feverishly around the clock to try and achieve this pledge by 2022. We're really challenging ourselves to maybe even hit it a bit sooner. And it really is, our vision to provide youth at risk that are at risk or are currently facing homelessness, the opportunity to realize their full potential and build a brighter future. So this just kind of gives you a sense of what our evolution has looked like. We've gone a long way, and I think we still have a lot of great work to do in this space. And on the next slide here is a little bit more details about how we actually do this. So in terms of our 4 key areas of work and where we tend to fund from a priority perspective, we focus on housing options. I'd say this is the primary area that we've funded to date. A large portion of our funding is allocated in this space. And I think you can kind of imagine or appreciate the synergies between our work as a company and how we can lend support to this area. So there's a natural synergy there, when it comes to in-kind support, but really when we talk about housing options, we're looking at things like providing emergency shelter funding, looking at affordable housing models and how we can support, more creation of affordable housing. We do a huge amount of renovation projects and really look at how do we continue to reinforce communities through their infrastructure. And I think this is something we're really proud of because it's not often, there can be limited funds in the space of capital projects, but we really want to be able to invest in infrastructure. And I think this will always be core to the identity of who we are as a foundation. And then outside of just the housing support, we also focus on life skills development. So when we talk about empowering youth and we talk about wanting to set youth up for success and livelihood, we really focus in on everything that's going to be able to support a youth to become successful. Whether that's through job readiness programs, so educating youth on opportunities, what their career choices are, how they can potentially access things like resume building and workshop support, and really understanding what career options are out there. We are doing a lot of work in this space, continuing to, I would say, increasing our support in this space in terms of job readiness and in the trades, skilled trades, and skilled trade labor, which I know Emily will speak a little bit more about, but I think probably of interest to this audience as well. And we all know there's a huge gap in terms of youth getting into careers in the trades. And so we're really looking to identify ways that we can continue to support that space. And then prevention is a huge area for us as well. So we don't just want to support the immediate need of youth at risk in terms of preventing and ending youth homelessness. We also want to look at the root cause. We want to understand, why youth might interact or end up in a situation where they're experiencing homelessness. How do we support them in their family? How do we support wraparound communities? What does it look like to take a few steps back? And, what can we do to ensure that that youth has as many opportunities as possible to avoid being at risk of homelessness? And then we also support research, community dialogue, and evaluation. So for us, as a foundation, our funding, we wanted to really be as leveraged as much as possible. And so for us, that means understanding what are the factors that exist in terms of homelessness and homelessness prevention. How do we fund more areas where we can increase research, where we can understand things like hidden homelessness and all these areas that are a little bit tougher to quantify when we look at the greater issue. And then we want to be funding, the best in class examples of models that are really working to improve life for youth. So that is a huge area for us, and I think will continue to grow in the years to come. And then this just kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of how we do this. So in terms of our granting, we have three kind of primary areas that we do this. And I will just pause because I know, Jacob, you had shared I think a really great reflection on the news that came out today with the 715 remains found in Saskatchewan. And of course, we're thinking about and well aware of the 215 children remains that were found in Kamloops. And so I think, it is really important to understand that when we talk about granting programs and we talk about investing in youth homelessness from a Home Depot Canada Foundation perspective, we are always really holding ourselves accountable to prioritizing vulnerable populations. So for us, that means BIPOC youth, that means young women, that means, there's a plethora of youth who are at risk in this space. We know it's close to or above 35,000 youth every year in Canada. We know that it's going to be a pretty strong makeup of BIPOC youth, youth who identify as part of the LGBTQ2SIA community. So, we really invest our dollars in those demographics and those youth as a priority first. We have fantastic partnerships with some Indigenous-led organizations that are also a priority for us, and we're constantly challenging ourselves. And I would say with confidence, our board is constantly challenging us as well to do more. I would love an open conversation of if anyone has, great examples of other organizations that aren't maybe in our support system right now that we should be considering that are really leading work. And when it comes to prioritizing Indigenous youth, we'd love to hear that. But it's really important for us to continue to prioritize funding in that space. And I think I will, Emily, do you want me to continue on this or do you want to cover the granting programs in detail?
Yeah, sure, I can walk.
I may have gone too far.
No, not at all, that was great. Like Amy said, we do have our 3 grant programs, the Orange Up Project grants, the community impact grants, and the regional partnerships. To the point that Amy just made, we are consistently looking to have open and honest conversations with our partners and with new partners that haven't previously been on our radar, to see what we can be doing to support. And so what I will say is that over the next couple of slides, we'll walk you through some key dates and some really important points about each of the grant programs. But that's not to say that there aren't opportunities outside of these windows and other types of initiatives that we support. We're always open to having those conversations to see how we can be better partners in the space. So with that, I'll go over to the Orange Door Project grants. The Orange Door Project grants are grants for up to $50,000 of a cash donation. Typically, they're open between January and February at the beginning of the year. That's when we accept applications, and then they go forward for board approval throughout the year. The Orange Door Project grants are unique in the sense that they have 3 streams that you can apply to when you're seeking funding, and the streams match up exactly to our pillars. So you can apply for a renovation grant, a prevention grant, or an employment grant. What this means is that if your facilities or say you own properties that are transitional homes for youth, if it's a shelter, if you need any kinds of repairs or renovations done at those facilities, you can apply for $50,000 through the Orange Door Project grants to help support with that. Under the prevention grants, these are really those programs that are taking a really upstream approach to how they're preventing youth homelessness. And so, for example, we are just going through the approval process for a few grants right now, but we're seeing a lot of focus on the Youth Reconnect model. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with that, but for those of you that aren't, it's a really upstream way of getting into the school system and making sure that there's a collaborative approach between schools and service providers to identify youth who may be at risk of experiencing homelessness and providing them with those wraparound supports that they need to stay engaged in education, to stay engaged in community. The third stream is employment. And again, I think we're seeing such an overwhelming response to these grant programs, and a lot of folks that are really looking to implement employment programs within their organization, both as a reaction to youth who are experiencing homelessness and ensuring that we can break down barriers to employment, but also as a form of prevention too. So making sure that youth are set up with the training that they need to get any kind of certifications or education that they may need to go on and find meaningful long-term employment, which, as we all know, can lead to the attainment or maintaining of a home. So those are the 3 streams that we support through the Orange Door Project grants. We're anticipating to reopen them in February of 2022, but always happy to have a conversation prior to that, leading up to it, if you have any questions about that grant program. The second program is our community impact grants, and they were open at the beginning of the year from about March to the end of May. We took a brief pause. We're just switching over our grant platforms right now, but we will be reopening the community impact grants on August 3rd. So our website, I think it's posted at the end, but it's the orangedoorproject.ca. We'll make sure to send that out. And there's a page on there that says apply, and it has all the links to our grant applications as well as timelines. So be sure to check out that page for August 3rd when the community impact grants go live. But a little bit about these programs. So these grants are up to $10,000. They can be either a cash donation, a Home Depot gift card, or a combination of both. It's completely up to the discretion of your organization. And the community impact grants are really an opportunity for us to provide funding for any small scale renovation and repair projects. And something that we introduced back in 2020 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic was that if your organization has any needs around PPE or making sure that your spaces are set up in a way that adheres to public health protocols, you can also apply for funding through the community impact grants. And then the final stream that we have is our regional partners. And so regional partners are slightly different from the Orange Door Project grants and community impact grants in a sense that they're an invitation grant. So currently we have 15 regional partners across the country. Very excited. We brought in Dinaway, which is an Indigenous-led organization. They're a new regional partner this year and have such a strong relationship with their local Home Depot stores. But we support these 15 organizations with grants anywhere from $125,000 to $300,000 a year. And like I mentioned, they're invited to apply each year. Typically, they're multi-year agreements. But I just wanted to kind of go through sort of, what are the features of a regional partnership? I'm sure many of you are wondering, how could I potentially become a regional partner one day? And so I think, it's valuable if I can just identify a few key factors that go into our decision making for who's invited to apply for a regional partnership grant, because it's, they're grants that we're always looking to expand and make sure that we're being really intentional and impactful in this space. So for our regional partners, typically in the past, they would have been a recipient of an Orange Door Project grant or a community impact grant. So they're familiar to us. We recognize the work that they do through those grant programs. They also typically have strong relationships with the local stores or members of the foundation team or our board of directors. If I use Indinaway again as an example, they came to us through a board member who's a regional director out west, and he knew that they had such a strong relationship with the local stores in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So we did, a lot of conversations with both our board as well as the store to understand more about that partnership, understand more about the work that they're doing with Indinaway. And what we found, and this leads to the third feature, is they have such a strong support from the community that they're working in. And so that's a really important feature as well too. A lot of our partners that are working in this space, they're larger organizations in the sense that they're able to help a large number of youth, and they're running various types of programs from emergency shelters to transitional housing to prevention programs like Youth Reconnect or the Upstream Project. And they're able to help youth at any point in their journey towards escaping homelessness. And then the final one is that they have a focus on youth homelessness with a prevention lens and can demonstrate the long-term successful solutions. So this isn't to say that if your organization focuses on those experiencing homelessness of all ages, that you wouldn't be eligible. For example, Welcome Home Mission in Quebec, they help anybody of any age that's experiencing homelessness, but the programs that we provide funding to are specific to youth. So it's not a deterrent if that's not your sole focus, but what we try to do is work with you to identify what are the needs of the youth in the programs that you're offering. So then outside of our grant programs, we also run a customer campaign that our colleague Devin leads every year. There's 2 campaigns that are typically run in a year. One is around the spring, summertime. We're actually just getting geared up now to launch the campaign at the beginning of July. And then the other one happens during the holiday season. So we have 182 stores across Canada, and each of those stores partners with a local youth serving charity in their community. Last year, we saw around 122 organizations being selected as campaign partners. 122, 182, it's because some stores are, they partner with the same organization, just depends on their geographic location and who's doing the work in the community. And the great thing about this program is that 100% of the funds that are raised in store and online stay within the local community that they're being donated. So, if you're donating in Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, your funds are going to an organization in Lloydminster, Saskatchewan. So it's a really great opportunity for customers to be connected to the local youth serving charities in their community. And then I just thought, before turning it back over to Amy to talk about a little bit more about our community investment work, just wanted to take a few minutes to walk you through what's next for the Home Depot Canada Foundation. So like Amy mentioned at the beginning, we are coming up to meeting and exceeding, which is very exciting, our $50 million pledge by 2022. But of course, then we look at it and we say, well, now what? What's next for us? And so what we're currently doing is we're undergoing a strategic roadmap development, and we're really identifying what the next 5 to 10 years looks like for the Home Depot Canada Foundation. Our intention is to stay focused and committed to preventing and ending youth homelessness, but being much more intentional and impactful in that space. And so the ways that we're looking at doing that are broken down under our 4 pillars. So under housing, what we're really trying to do from a research lens is understand housing first for youth and help support organizations to implement that model at their organizations. Under employment and life skills, we do have a signature skilled trades initiative that will be launching in August externally. Lots of really, really great, exciting information to come on that. But basically what we're doing is we're looking at supporting organizations that are running skilled trades programs for youth who have experienced homelessness or are facing barriers to employment, to get the training, the education, the certifications, but most importantly, the social supports that they need to be able to go on and find long-term meaningful employment in the trades. Under prevention, I think I've mentioned it a couple of times, we're really looking at those upstream initiatives and understanding the Youth Reconnect program and how we can be supporting partners in the community to build their capacity to implement these types of programs. And then lastly, under research, like I mentioned, all of this is a tribute to our strategic roadmap development that we're currently working on. And we're hoping, we know that the First Without a Home survey helped us really guide our work when we first started out on this journey. But there's so many more resources that are going to be available as phase 2 of that survey gets released this year. So really understanding what are the calls to action and what more can we be doing as a foundation to be better partners and supporters in the community. And so with that, I will pass it back over to Amy to talk about a couple of the community investment pieces that she mentioned at the beginning of our presentation.
Great. So we, give a little bit of an overview here, but I do think it's valuable to speak to these pieces just when we talk about additional ways that you can kind of pull on the levers of Home Depot's support if you're looking for partnership. So the Team Depot program for us is huge in terms of getting all of our associates out into the community. So often our community grant partners who Emily spoke to and our regional partners and our Orange Door Project grant partners will, as part of their application process, also kind of think through some ways they might be able to leverage our volunteers. We're proud of this work because it's important to give this opportunity and it's important for our associates to give back, but we also feel quite confident that we have a pretty skilled labor force of associates who have expertise in different spaces. And it can really go beyond, just coming out and supporting a project, but also, lending some of that expertise and even opportunities for us to extend to our greater Home Depot network. And looking for how we can kind of, bring different backgrounds and different skilled labor to an opportunity. So would encourage you to think about that and how you might be able to leverage our volunteers. And it's something that we also, as part of the Team Depot program, I should share, also typically would make a contribution to the project that we're supporting, either through cash or through a gift card. And so that's something that we are really proud of. And then in terms of, on the next slide here, we have our corporate giving programs. Again, another way to think about how you can seek support from the Home Depot Canada. So our store giving program, every store has the opportunity to give back to their community through gift cards. We equip them with that from a donation and gift card perspective, but they get the opportunity to determine what the greatest need is in their community and who they want to support. So we always love to advocate that if you have a store in your community, your very best way to get into the Home Depot Canada ecosystem is to build those relationships with your local store. They are going to be your best support, whether it's through fundraising events, whether it's through in-kind support. Every year our stores donate significantly to the Habitat for Humanity Restore program. Last year we donated over $10 million in products. So there's lots of, we're going to speak about that. Great. So there's lots of really great opportunities here. Definitely just, get in with your local stores if you have one in your neighborhood, leverage them. And I think our store managers and our store associates are so willing to do everything they can. And for us as a community investment team, it's really about empowering them to address the needs in their local community. So, during our campaign, which is going to be, can't help but plug it again, taking place starting July 6th, the in-store campaign is amazing because each of those stores choose their local community partner that they want to support. So, we set the very loose parameters of, please ideally work with an organization that is helping to prevent and end youth homelessness, because that's, an issue that we're all very passionate about. And then they go out and they find who is that right partner, and they build great relationships. And as Emily shared the story with Ndawe, a partner during a store campaign can raise some great funding, and that can also lead to opportunities like significant investments from the foundation. So we love to celebrate those relationships and find even more opportunities for them for you to connect and for everyone to connect together within our greater Home Depot ecosystem. But to the Habitat Humanity Restore program, again, something that we're incredibly proud of. We find it really important, not just from a donation and a community investment perspective, but from a sustainability perspective. This is a big part of how we practice a good conscious eco footprint as a company. And so we're very fortunate to have this partnership with Habitat for Humanity and the Restore program. And they're just truly such a great partner for us. I think that's everything from my end. So got some great ways to stay connected here. I think both Emily and I will share, if anyone wants to add us in LinkedIn, please do. But I think we also have time for question and answer if anyone has any.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the great presentation. I actually just learned quite a bit about what the Home Depot Foundation does as well. So that was great, very educational. So to everybody in the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A function on the webinar control panel. So first question, does the Home Depot Foundation support communities where there is no brick and mortar Home Depot store?
Yes, absolutely. And to be frank, we'd love to do even more. It's really not just about supporting the communities where our stores are, it's supporting the greatest need, especially from the foundation. So we are always looking for new opportunities in remote and rural communities. We really want to be able to extend our areas of support. So by no means does it have to be where a store is operating. And if anything, we're very open to even more opportunities outside of our operational space.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, we had the pleasure of presenting at the Rural and Remote Housing Conference last month, and we're really looking to try to build our partnerships with rural and remote communities much more. So, for example, in 2019, we provided an Original Project grant to an organization working out of Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. The closest Home Depot, I think, was like 3.5 hours away. But we provided them with a $50,000 grant to support their youth employment training program. Last year, we provided a grant to an organization working out of the Northwest Territories, and the Territories are definitely an area that we haven't typically seen a lot of applications coming through, but that we're hoping to develop out a strategy a little bit more to be able to have those conversations, build those partnerships, and let folks in the Territories know that our funding is available to them.
Great, thanks. Does the not-for-profit organization must have charitable status in order to qualify for the grants?
Yeah, so typically we do, for our grant programs, we do require that organizations are set with a charitable registration number. But what I would say is, reach out, let's have a conversation about it, because we'd love to hear about the work that you're doing and try to figure out if there is a way that we are able to support. So I wouldn't let that be any kind of deterrent. I would say let's have a conversation and see where we can help.
Thank you, Emily. Another question. Can you elaborate a bit on your upcoming priorities related to supporting the development of affordable housing for youth? What role does the Home Depot Foundation want to play in those projects?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the biggest partnerships that we usually talk about when we talk about affordable housing is our regional partner, Raising the Roof. So for those of you that aren't familiar, Raising the Roof runs an amazing program called Reside that we're funders of, and they go out and they purchase housing that they then use a social contractor to go in and renovate and update and make it into an affordable housing unit, whether it's for youth who've experienced homelessness or families that are at risk of experiencing homelessness. So I would say they're one of our largest partners in terms of supporting organizations that are going out to find affordable housing units. But it's an area that we're looking to do a little bit more in, talking about capacity building for organizations to make sure that they have the resources to go out and find these properties, and that when they find them, that we're able to support them in acquiring them and renovating them. So Raising the Roof is probably our biggest example of how we're supporting in affordable housing. But with the launch of our Skilled Trades initiative that'll come out later this year, lots of really great work being done there with those partners as well in terms of finding housing, using the youth who are going through their programs to get the hands-on training that they need by working on affordable housing units for those that are at risk of experiencing homelessness. So those are the two kind of bigger initiatives that we are looking at. But Amy, I don't know if there's anything you want to add from that standpoint.
No, just that the question of like the sort of where we're looking to go and what does it look like in terms of, you know, future funding and strategy for the foundation. I think we're very interested in learning about innovative models. You know, we have seen some really fantastic examples of affordable housing units that are also upskilling youth, that are also, you know, providing job training, family supports, all these things. So it's of interest to us to learn more. So if you know, if you're doing something innovative, we're definitely interested in learning more and having those conversations. It's where we want to grow for sure.
Great. Thanks so much, Amy and Emily. Another good question, but a simple one. Is the funding through your program stackable?
So typically what we try to do is if an organization has received like an Orange Door project grant for $50,000 and then they're also looking to receive a community impact grant, it's really dependent on, you know, the time of when you're applying, the amount of applications that we have coming through. So we don't typically say, you know, flat out, no, they're not stackable, because it's always dependent on the situation, the circumstances, and what you're applying for funding for. Typically what we try to do, you know, for example, our regional partners who are receiving a more significant amount of funds, they are allowed and able to apply for our other grant programs, but we try to give preference to organizations that we haven't already provided funding to yet. And so that is, I think, one of the important pieces about why we say to always reach out and have a conversation with us, because we want to really understand what your needs are and what the dollar amount is that is associated with that, so that we can find the right program to support you in and be able to support you solely through that program. But again, recognizing that there are times where things come up and the organization is in need of funding. So always happy to work with you on that.
Thanks, Emily. And in follow-up to that question, a lot of the time people in the sector apply for different programs through like CMHC or in some cases FCM's Green Municipal Fund. Would applicants to those programs be able to stack any dollars that they get from there with your programs?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding the question correctly, so if you're receiving funding from another organization, can you apply for a grant through us to help support the same project? Yes, most definitely. I think one of the questions in most of our grant applications is, do you have additional funders that are supporting this project? Because as much as we would love to do it all, we recognize that there are some great partners in this space that are also doing this really great work. And so if we can bundle our funding together, if we can stack that, absolutely more than happy to do that.
Great, thanks, Emily. So we don't have any more questions in the chat function or the Q&A function. So any final points that any of you would like to make?
And for myself, I just want to say thank you so much for having us here today and giving us the opportunity to talk about the work that we are really, really lucky to be able to do. And please feel free to reach out if you heard us mention something in today's presentation that makes you think, oh, maybe I wouldn't be eligible for a grant. Please still reach out. We would love to hear about the work that you're doing in your community and see if there are synergies. Like we mentioned, we are undergoing our strategic development right now, so it's a great time to be having these conversations and understand what the need is. So reach out is what I'll say.
Yeah, thank you for the time, and we hope this is the beginning of many conversations.
Well, thanks, Michael, Amy, and Emily for presenting today. It was great. I learned quite a bit. I think everybody that tuned in did as well. And thank you to everybody in our audience for tuning in today too. In follow-up to this webinar, we'll be sending a post-webinar survey, copies of the slide deck, and some additional information, including Michael, Emily, and Amy's contact information. On that note, I hope everybody takes care and stay safe, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.